Spherical buildings are some of the coolest and most unique structures out there. They push the limits of what architecture can do. From gigantic planetariums to futuristic event spaces, these massive spheres are turning heads all over the world. So let's get the ball rolling. Here are the 15 biggest sphere buildings in the world. Number 15. La Géode. Paris is best known for its historic buildings and its monuments, but one new building that's recently grabbed headlines is La Géode. This mirror-finished sphere comes in at a sizable 36 meters in diameter, and it holds an OmniMax theater. Fitted with a large sound system, it plays science, nature, and travel documentaries, short and long feature-length films, and high-definition animated movies using IMAX, 4DX, and Dolby Cinema technologies. Number 14. The Oriental Pearl Tower. So of all the entries on this list, none give off that futuristic vibe quite like the Oriental Pearl. To plenty of cool exhibits, its defining feature is that massive sphere-shaped planetarium. Coming in at 35 meters in diameter, it's made out of about 700 panels joined together into a perfect sphere. Inside, there are 350 reclining seats, all of which can rotate freely, and this in turn helps make the viewing experience extraordinary. And given the fact that it's the world's largest planetarium, it's definitely worth visiting. Number 12. The Kazakhstan Pavilion and Science Museum. While Kazakhstan may be best known for its associations with Borat, it also deserves some credit for being home of the Kazakhstan Pavilion and Science Museum. Built as the centerpiece for an expo back in 2017, it's a pure glass sphere that comes in at an impressive 80 meters in diameter, making it the third largest sphere on the planet. Inside, there's a central atrium, multiple passenger elevators, and several floors of museum and exhibition space, making it a great place to check out if you ever travel to the Kazakh capital of Astana. After all, it holds nearly 4 million liters of water. Number 10. The Free Spirit Spheres. So when you think of a treehouse, a wooden house-like building is probably what comes to your mind. However, the Free Spirit Spheres takes that classic design and completely turns it on its head. Located along Canada's west coast on Vancouver Island, the spheres function as both comfortable living spaces and works of art. Designed in relation to the philosophy of biomimicry, these spheres try to reflect the nature around them, and despite being very modern, they more or less manage to do so. After all, the spherical shape of the balls is modeled after that of a tree nut, with the foundational idea being that the design is very durable against external pressures. In order to keep the sphere in place, it's tethered to the strong points of 3 separate trees using vertical ropes. Now, this is important because it helps distribute the load of the spheres evenly, resulting in a stable hang that doesn't cause swaying from side to side when there's wind. Now, the Free Spirit Spheres are not private residences, rather because it can sleep a third person and it has a fridge. However, it's the Luna that's the newest and most luxurious of the 3, as it's got the best design elements and features from her predecessors. Best of all 3 spheres have running water, Wi-Fi, and power, making them pretty comfortable despite not being anything like your typical house or hotel room. So it should come as a little surprise that many people want to spend a night here in these spheres, especially since they're some of the only spherical tree houses on the planet. However, at a price point of between $250 and $300 a night, you're gonna have to pay a pretty penny in order to stay there. Number 9. The Montreal Biosphere. Montreal, it's easily one of Canada's most dynamic cities, and in 1967, it became the site of a lot of action when it decided to host Expo 67. This event was grand in scale. It was a World's Fair. It was held with an aim to showcase the 20th century's greatest human achievements. Hosting 62 countries and hundreds of thousands of visitors, it brought the city to life. And at the center of it all was an incredible string that included spacecraft such as Freedom 7, Gemini 7, and Apollo capsules. On the mezzanine level, the American Spirit exhibit displayed a wide variety of artifacts, including Native American items, folk art, guitars owned by famous musicians, and an array of hats representing different regions and occupations. Other attractions included a gallery of Hollywood memorabilia, a painting display, and a 300-seat theater showing, of all things, American schoolchildren in a playground. To keep visitors comfortable, a complex system of shades was used to control the internal temperature. Now, the idea behind this was that the shades would work in a similar way to the human body, using so-called pores to regulate the enclosed system. However, these pores didn't end up working, and in the end, maintenance teams simply stopped using them. Despite that shortcoming, though, the Biosphere was a hit, and once Expo 67 was over, the United States donated it to the city of Montreal. From there, it periodically changed uses. However, this quickly came to a halt when in 1976 the building caught on fire. Water, climate change, air, eco-technologies, and sustainable development. Number 8. The Apple Sphere. If you head to Hong Kong's Marina Bay Sands Resort, you can see an Apple store that's like no other. Floating atop the water, the Spherical store is 30 meters long and made up of 114 glass panels that sit atop an existing concrete foundation. Designed by Foster & Partners, it was made to be a centerpiece of the resort and a marvel of human engineering. As put by senior executive partner Stefan Beilig, it's sort of an igloo. It's all structural glass with very thin polished stainless steel ribs, which seem to dematerialize, and obviously no columns, which more or less goes without saying these days. You won't find anything with a more delicate structure probably in the world. Well, now, despite basically being a glass bubble, it has certain things in place to make sure it doesn't become too hot, bright, or noisy. First thing, the sphere makes use of a series of interior baffles. These triangular wedges are around the sphere and arranged in horizontal rings, mock-ups to ensure effectiveness. Well, to assist the baffles, the sphere also has a 3-meter oculus on top of the dome. Now, this creates a sploosh of light that can be meticulously tracked. According to Bailing, they have the calculations so down to the nose that he can tell you exactly where that splooge of light will be at any time of the day, any time of year. Well, once you're finished shopping at Apple, the concrete foundation houses a lower floor. Now, this links to an entrance within the Marina Bay Sands shopping mall. Reaching the bubble from the basement requires 2 escalators, and Foster & Partners have worked on making that journey as theatrical as possible. As put by Bailing, there really is a dramatic sequence. You come into a quite compressed store in the lower level, which has the display tables, which feels familiar. But then you realize there's a glow at the end, and you see these escalators which travel through a quite magical polished stainless steel tunnel, which creates a crazy kaleidoscopic effect, and then you enter this very spectacular space. It's definitely not a store where you'll say, yeah, I've seen that before. Well, now, while this glass ball may seem a bit extravagant, it's actually intended to add something a little calmer to the cluttered and chaotic Singapore burger in 1971. Built using timber blocks and zinc sheets, for a while it served as a painter's studio. But that all came to an end when suddenly local authorities let the Lipburgers know that the spherical buildings were not allowed. In an attempt to protect their creation from being demolished, the Lipburgers got creative, declaring their sphere to be a micronation. They named it the Republic of Kugelmugel and got to work giving it the trappings of a sovereign country. Complete with unique self-made street signs and, as the dispute escalated, its own stamps and currency, and what was once a protest became eventually a serious legal matter. Eventually, the Lipburgers stopped paying property taxes, and in 1979, the eldest Lipburger was put in jail for 10 weeks for the offense of putting up unapproved street signs. Well, in 1982, the building was taken apart and transported to Vienna. Located within the city's anti-fascism square, it was officially adopted by the city of Vienna by the then mayor Helmut Zilk, who granted the object city. However, an informal deal has been reached. The city has stopped trying to reclaim the sphere and has accepted it as part of Vienna's culture, allowing it to be the only building in the city to exist without a permit. Now, really the key to understanding Kugelmugel is that its foundation as a republic wasn't just an attempt to prevent the demolition of it, but an artistic intervention and an act of resistance. This, in turn, has made it quite famous, and the sphere has gotten its fair share of visitors. While the elder Lipburger passed away in 2015, the micronation can still be visited, as his son has taken over the management of the nation. And while the Republic's borders were closed during the COVID-19 pandemic, it reopened to visitors once more in June of 2024. If you decide to visit, you're in for quite an experience. After all, for a fee, visitors can view the artistic nation and even get issued a pretend visa permit with a stamp and a signature on it. So if you're in Vienna and you want to see a tourist attraction that's a bit off the beaten path, I'd suggest giving the Kugelmugel a visit. Number 6. Spaceship Earth. Disney World is easily one of the world's most iconic. Looking cool, they also have an important structural purpose. You see, when it rains, the triangles ensures that no water pours off the sides onto the ground. Instead, all of the water is collected through small gaps in the triangles and flows into a gutter system. Now, while the whole thing looks like one structure, it's actually 2 structural domes, with each being completely separate despite looking attached. Once you're inside, you're treated to one of the best rides that Disney has to offer. The 15-minute ride takes guests on a time machine-themed experience, demonstrating how advancements in human communication have helped to create the future one step at a time. The ride starts by showing scenes from the development of early language, then moves on to cave paintings, next to the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and then onto the alphabet, later to the printing press, and finally to today's modern communications, including telecommunication, mass communication, and the internet. While the theme of communication has been a constant since its opening in 1982, it's been updated about 3 times, once in '86, another time in '94. Well, however, as of now, there is a belief that it will be updated after popular rides such as the test track are finished with refurbishments. And it's also worth mentioning that for a few years, Spaceship Earth had an interesting addition. In order to celebrate the year 2000, a 25-story tall magic wand held by Mickey Mouse's hand was built next to the sphere. While it was an interesting, if somewhat eclectic addition, the decision was made to remove it in 2007 for the theme park's 25th anniversary. It was rumored that Siemens AG, the new sponsor of Spaceship Earth, requested the wand be removed as it didn't fit their corporate image. However, to date, I'm not entirely sure why it's been taken down. However, at the very least, Disney managed to profit off of it. After all, components of the wand structure were later auctioned off on eBay. Number 5. The Amazon Spheres. Amazon. It's one of the world's largest companies, and it's because of the large budget their work allows for that they were able to create some interesting buildings at their HQ. Chief among them are the Amazon Spheres. And while the materials put into the building are incredible, it's the inside that truly impresses. Housing a cafeteria, stairway, elevators, and bathrooms, it's got all the essentials, alongside meeting spaces, tables, and benches, all of which can seat a total of about 800 people. The stairwell's covered by a 4-story living wall with over 25,000 plants, and while this is impressive in its own right, Amazon really went all out with its plant offering. In total, the spheres have about 40,000 plants from 50 different countries, and they're divided into several areas, with the western and eastern domes segregated into the Old World and New World. These plants were specifically grown for the building by a horticulturalist who worked on the project full-time for over a 3-year period at a specifically designated greenhouse. For example, there's a massive 17-meter-tall fig tree named Ruby, an incredible Titum arum corpse flower named Morticia that only blooms once every few years, and a taller corpse flower named Bellatrix that acts in a similar fashion. In order to keep all growing conditions up closed off to allow Amazon employees to enjoy the space in peace, they are open to the public on the 1st and 3rd Saturday of each month. They're completely free to visit, and while you have to book in advance, the only restriction is that you can only stay for 1 hour. This makes them a cool thing to check out on a visit to Seattle. Number 4. The Maparium Globe. While technically not a building in its own right, this strange sphere gets a spot on this list due to its impressive size and design. In the early 1930s, Boston architect Chester Lindsay Churchill was commissioned to design the new Christian Science Publishing Society HQ. This was in a bid to compete with the other Grant newspaper headquarters of the day, that is the rival New York Daily News building. At this point in time, the building stood apart for having a gigantic spinning globe. In response, the Christian Science Monitor wanted to create something even grander. It was this ambition that brought us the Maparium Globe. Coming in at a sizable 3 stories tall, this inside-out stained-glass globe is not only large, but also intersects eye. But with a view from the very center of the globe looking out, the eye is in the same distance from every point on the map, and this in turn makes it a far more accurate visual representation. When looking at a globe in this way, the face of it completely changes. Africa is huge, and North America, Europe, and Asia are all jammed up against the North Pole. In fact, it is common for countries near the equator to look smaller, and for those higher north to look larger on a regular map of globe. However, from this perspective, everything looks how it should. Now, it is worth mentioning that while the relative size and position of the continents are correct, the map's political boundaries are long out of date. The Maparium Globe hasn't changed since 1935, meaning that now defunct states such as Siam, French Indochina, and the USSR remain. However, newer additions such as the Czech Republic and Indonesia are not present. But the most curious part about this exhibit is the acoustics. When you stand at the center of this, part are worth it if you're in the Boston area. Number 3. The Sphere. Vegas is known for having big, flashy attractions, and few grab the attention quite like the Sphere. It's located at the famous Venetian resort. Sphere stands apart for being the most impressive entertainment venue on the Strip. Coming in at a massive 157 meters in length and holding over 18,600 spectators, it cost a whopping $2.3 billion to build. This makes it the most expensive building in all of Las Vegas. Yet, while the price tag may have been high, the Sphere has a lot of capability. First and foremost, its exterior is incredible. It features over 580,000 square feet of LED displays. It's on these screens that the Sphere projects impressive images, with these including celestial bodies such as the Earth, Mars, and the Moon, to create unique images such as emojis and shaking snow globes. Once inside, visitors are treated to an interior that has an incredible 160,000 square foot 16K. However, if you want the VIP experience, you can buy the so-called director's seats. Now, those come in at about $300 each and give you a bit more value. After all, not only are the seats better, but you get access to some interesting extras. Now, those include a pre-show lounge featuring a sampling of beer, wine, soda, and snacks, a complimentary VIP lanyard, a collector's cup, and a custom director t-shirt. The Sphere has also hosted concerts for several big-name artists. So far, this has included U2, Fish, Dead & Company, and the Eagles. However, since the Sphere has only been open for a little while, I'm sure more will be on the roster as time goes on. And it's also worth noting that despite the cool effects and the great experience, the Sphere has gotten a fair bit of criticism. While visually stunning, many say that the show is not worth the money, and that its eco-friendly message itself is a bit hypocritical, given the fact that the Sphere takes a lot of energy to power up. Vegas already has a lot of venues for special events, with its premier offerings including the T-Mobile Arena. Get enough credit for is the Avicii Arena. Coming in at 110 meters in diameter, it was considered to be the world's largest sphere until the Vegas Sphere overtook it in 2023. Yet despite losing its record only recently, this arena has been around for a while. First constructed in 1989, it was known as the Ericsson Globe for most of its life, only being renamed Avicii Arena in honor of the famous DJ in 2021. In terms of events, it hosts just about anything under the sun, including hockey matches, concerts, and other mass events such as the Eurovision Song Contest. Now, while it's served its purpose well, it's also been facelifted. After all, it spent much of 2024 being renovated in anticipation of the 2025 Hockey World Championships. But there's another thing that's unique about the Avicii Arena, unbeknownst to many. It's at the center of the world's largest scale model of the solar system. Avicii Arena serves as the sun. Smaller spheres representing the planets are found elsewhere. The scale is 1 to 20 million and features planets found across Stockholm, its suburbs. The Earth is at the Swedish Museum of Natural History and comes in at a similar 65 centimeters. Mars is on the upper level of a shopping center and subway station in Stockholm and comes in at about 35 centimeters. Jupiter, which is far larger than the rest, comes in at 7.3 meters. However, it's a bit farther afield and it's located inside the Clarion Hotel at Stockholm Arlanda Airport. Uranus is located in the town of Lofstabrook, Neptune in the coastal town of Söderhamn, and Pluto near the village center of Delsbo. From there, more objects can be found further afield. The farthest away is the Swift-Tuttle Comet, which is located about 380 kilometers away from the Avicii Arena. Now, if you were listening carefully, you may notice that I didn't mention one planet, Saturn. You see, in the city of Uppsala, the plan was to build a Saturn-shaped dome over the planetarium of a local school. However, the funding fell through, and today the ringed planet is represented by a simple flower carpet. Well, while it's disappointing, given how impressive the rest of this is, it was taken up by schools, scientific institutions, and other organizations further afield. And this has led to the Sweden solar system to become the amazing two-scale solar network that it is today. Number 1. The Trilon and Perisphere. While most of the spheres on this list are still standing, the Trilon and Perisphere are one of the few to no longer be around. Built to be the center of the 1939 New York World Fair, this display consisted of a tall, needle-like obelisk structure and a sphere. Built in keeping with the fair's theme of the world of tomorrow, it was part of what was meant to be a utopian city of the future. Those who entered the sphere viewed it from above on a moving sidewalk, where a multi-image slide presentation was projected on the dome of the sphere. For an admission price of just 25 cents, this presentation showed an ideal future city. Every 6 minutes, a recorded narration would extol the wonders of this utopian city, and the lights would dim to mimic the nighttime as phosphorescent paint made the buildings look. Used a few interesting visual techniques. For example, the building had 8 relatively small pylons for support. Now, while this could have been a problem, they were expertly hidden by using strategically placed fountains and mirrors. This made the Perisphere look like it was floating, giving it an extra futuristic look. The exterior was also made using some cool technology. At night, moving images of clouds were projected from nearby exhibit buildings onto the perisphere. Now, at first, this proved to be a problem. After all, the amount of light needed to project the images would have burned through regular film. To fix this, the film slides were enclosed in glass and projected using a new type of projector with a custom-designed battery and super long focus lens. But it is also worth noting that not everything went to plan here. You see, the building was plagued by budget constraints, and this forced the design to not be the perfect, minimalist building that had been in mind. You see, the original plans for the perisphere called for it to be covered in a smooth and seamless layer of concrete. However, due to the high cost of that material, gypsum was used instead. Well, unfortunately, despite the fact it didn't last forever. While popular when it opened in 1939 and 1940, overall attendance lagged far behind the previous year. This was a problem because it meant that the sphere operated at a loss, and as a result, in 1941, demolition began. The resulting scrap material was then sold to make armaments for World War II. Now, while that may sound like a sad ending, there is a silver lining to this story. You see, in 1964, New York hosted another World Fair. In keeping with tradition, they put up another sphere where the perisphere once stood, this time a model of the Earth known as the Unisphere. While far smaller than the original, it is a pretty cool sight, and it's worth visiting if you live in or around New York City. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.